Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Ryan Koehler with eCapital Advisors, and today I'm going to be introducing you to a modern analytics platform called Incorta. Before I jump into the Incorta overview, I just want to provide some brief background on eCapital Advisors as a whole. We are a firm based in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and ultimately our consultants pride themselves on being A, problem solvers, B, technology experts, and C, transformation leadership or leaders within the technology space. So ultimately our goal is to provide 360-degree coverage for the clients that we partner with, so that you as a partner of eCapital feel like you're getting the support and that custom solution for your organization. Let's jump into the overview itself. So what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about some common data challenges that we see organizations experience from time to time and most frequently. And I think this is a great way to kind of set the foundation to introduce Incorta as a whole. And that's where I'll kind of talk about the Incorta difference and how Incorta is really becoming a game changer in this space today. And finally, definitely want to hop into the tool itself and show you a brief demo on the technology too. So let's just jump right back into common data challenges. So these 5 data challenges I really feel personally are some of the largest challenges and most common ones that we see within pretty much all the organizations that we partner with. The first one being too much ETL. So those of you who don't know what ETL is, it really stands for extract, transform, and load. And so the challenges with ETL today is it's becoming more and more expensive as organizations need to become more nimble. It's becoming a pain point from a monthly and an annual maintenance perspective. And ultimately, it's just preventing organizations from being able to have true self-service within their data landscape. So when we have too much ETL, all that transformation on the fly, when we're taking source data and bringing it into a target system, will ultimately lead to slow refresh times. So I know those of you on the call, I'm sure some of us have nightly processes that are refreshing data from an ERP system into an enterprise data warehouse. And that nightly refresh process might take 2 hours, might take 4 hours, might take 6 hours. It might take 10 hours a night to refresh the data that you need to be able to tell the story of where your business is going. So when we have those long and slow refresh times, we're really prevented to be able to have real-time updates, which leads to the third piece here, around poor query responses. And those two kind of go hand in hand, right? So, another example here would be, I'm sure most of us on the call have a report we refresh or a dashboard where we're trying to go from a higher level organization view down to some transactional level detail. And, our computers are just spinning and spinning and spinning, right? Maybe you go and grab a coffee quick for 5 minutes. You come back, that report's still spinning and spinning and spinning. And it's really because, those database joins, they don't perform to scale, right? And so, the ETL, the slow refresh times, the poor query responses, all 3 of those really lead into the fact that most analytics tools today do not provide us actionable insights within one technology itself. So I don't have the ability then to peel back the onion and respond dynamically to follow-up questions, right? I may go into a meeting with my team and be equipped to answer the questions that were sent out ahead of time, right? Because I've had time to prep and I've had time to go through my Excel gymnastics to, get the data that I need. But 9 times out of 10, right, you're going to have follow-up questions. And a lot of times, in order to get the right answer for those follow-up questions, you may have to go back to your team and go through the same type of Excel gymnastics again, go to multiple different source systems, combine data sets again, and then finally maybe a day later or a week later, you can then answer those follow-up questions. But then maybe by the time you're able to answer those follow-up questions, maybe that information is no longer needed or it's too late, right? So having that ability to continue to peel back that onion, and be able to answer, any question at any time is becoming more and more critical in the landscape that we work in today. And finally, and this is one that I think is certainly underrated, is the lack of self-service or the inability to have true self-service today. What do I mean by self-service? Kind of taking a step back here, when we think about starting a new, technical implementation, a lot of times we'll go through, requirement sessions / discovery sessions, and then we put together a design. But all of these design components are based on what the requirements are in that point in time, right? We all know things change very quickly and very rapidly. And so 6 months down the line, a year down the line, 2 years down the line, that original system that we built, probably we can't even really recognize it at this point because we've changed it so much, right? But it takes time to change it, and we have to go back to the drawing board. And a lot of times what that process will look like, right, is we'll submit an IT ticket, we'll wait for that IT ticket to get prioritized or even get sent to the right work group. Maybe it'll bounce around a couple work groups, finally it gets prioritized, and then we get capital funding for it, and then we deploy it. Well, 6 months later, when we finally get that solution, maybe, that enhancement that we asked for 6 months ago, it might not even be relevant anymore, right? So I think the ability to get that self-service in your modern analytics platform is becoming more and more critical as we move forward in today's landscape. So we talked about, the 5 most common data challenges that I personally see from time to time or most frequently. And I want to go into this diagram next here, which is really highlighting that traditional data approach. And I think hopefully this will resonate with those of you, on the call today, and kind of be familiar with this overall data flow. So depending on the size of your organization, right, if we start on the far left side of the screen here, we're probably going to have more than just one ERP system or more than one source system that we need to be able to tell that full story of what's happening with our business. And so because we have multiple source systems, we really need the ability then to take a source system, data format and move it into a data warehouse where we can then reshape that data so that we can present it in more of a meaningful fashion and a combined data set to our end users. So that's where that ETL process comes into play, right? We're transforming that data on the fly to get it into the right shape so that we can consume it. Over time, that enterprise data warehouse view, we'll start to build, data marts on top of it, one-off BI cubes, and then we'll introduce more ETL process, right? We'll take that ETL from our data warehouse and transform it to get it into our data marts. And then, lastly, we'll have reporting requirements that are met with BI tools, through data visualization and different types of reporting. But chances are, we're going to have more than one BI tool within the organization, right? Depending on, what pocket of the business you're in. Maybe finance owns a Tableau, but operations owns Power BI, right? Not a similar look and feel across the organization. Most importantly with this diagram, though, the challenge it presents, right, is, again, when things change and we know the business landscape will change, right, we're going to need to pivot. We're going to need to be agile. We have to go all the way back downstream or upstream and start to change this. So if we get a reporting requirement or an enhancement that gets requested, we're going to have to go all the way back to the source system, evaluate it, update our ETL processes to go from our source to our data warehouse, and then update additional, ETL processes to get to our one-off BI cubes and our data marts. And again, by the time we're able to implement that enhancement, it might be too late, right? And so this becomes a very expensive model over time, and you don't necessarily get that return on investment that you're looking for, especially over a long period of time. So based on those 5 common data challenges, how can we attack these in a different way, right? Well, Incorta can definitely simplify this approach. So to give you some contrast here, let's look at more of a modern data approach. So we still have the same type of source systems, and we're going to ingest data from multiple sources into Incorta and use Incorta as a true data hub, right? But one thing that we're going to do in Incorta is we're going to leverage our direct data mapping engine, and that's really the game changer from an Incorta standpoint. And I'll get to that in the next slide to give you some background on that, because that to me is what got me excited about Incorta. But if you see what Incorta is replacing here, we're replacing a lot of that ETL or most of the ETL. There's no one-off BI cubes that we need anymore, because we can facilitate the right data elements within the Incorta engine itself. And so when reporting requirements change, we don't have these hoops we have to jump through anymore. We can simply modify it within Incorta itself. You'll notice in the middle of the screen here, I have an orange arrow kind of going back and forth between Incorta and the reporting requirements. I have that there because you can actually visualize the data directly in Incorta as well. So you truly do not need an enterprise BI tool to deploy your reporting to your end users if you don't want to. Now, if you're an organization that already is key on Tableau or Power BI or MicroStrategy, and you want to continue to use those BI tools because the organization is used to it, I would encourage you to throw those BI tools on top of Incorta, because then you're able to leverage the power of Incorta and still have that similar look and feel that you want to see today with your existing BI tools. But the beauty here is a lot of the clients that we're working with, we get really positive feedback with the visualization options directly in Incorta itself. And so a lot of them are starting to gravitate towards keeping that visualization and that reporting within Incorta too. So I mentioned the direct data mapping engine. Again, that truly is the game changer itself. What is direct data mapping? Sounds fancy, right? Let me talk about the three foundational aspects of direct data mapping that really make it that game changer. The number one piece for direct data mapping is it keeps the data in the same shape as the source system. What do I mean by that? So if I have 120 tables and 300 joins in my source system, I'm going to have 120 tables and 300 joins in Incorta. And so what that translates to then is I don't have to do that ETL process on the fly, but rather my ETL turns into ELT. So now I'm extracting, I'm loading, but that transformation is happening after the fact. So I'm transforming the data and modeling it within Incorta itself. So what does that do? That also leads to fast refresh times, because we don't have to rely on that ETL process, transforming the data on the fly during the data refresh process. We're just taking and consuming that data and not reshaping it on the fly. The second foundational aspect of direct data mapping is that it's data relationship aware. What do I mean by that? Basically what I mean here is we don't have to pre-aggregate data anymore. We don't have to create custom views or aggregated views to give us the right data sets at the right level of the organization. It retains the data fidelity within the engine itself. So that's what really allows us then to say I'm at a top level KPI, total revenue or something like that at the top of my organization. And within a few clicks and less than a few seconds, I can go down all the way to the transactional level detail for all of my operating units, all of my divisions, all of my products, and get every single transaction that makes up that top level number all in the same dashboard and drill in and pivot as I see fit. So that's an absolute game changer there, because in today's world, or more of the traditional approach, you certainly can't do that in one technology itself. You may be doing some sort of drill through reporting back into your ERP system from a reporting engine, but having that at the tips of your fingers from an end user standpoint, very, very powerful. And lastly, the direct data mapping engine really performs against billions of records, the state of an art speed. So that really gives us our fast query response times. Again, being able to go from a top level KPI and peel back that onion to get to the transactional level detail, I no longer have to take those coffee breaks anymore as my computer spins waiting for that report to refresh, right? So ultimately what this gives us then is we now have self-service, because if I need to, say, add a new field to my report, I can do it within the direct data mapping engine or within Incorta itself as my data hub, and I don't have to go back and modify my ETL. I don't have to change, a separate BI tool, some data mart, ETL, a data warehouse. I have a data hub that retains all that information for me. And lastly, right, it's given us our actionable insights within one engine. So this truly is the game changer of Incorta, this direct data mapping engine. So you're probably thinking to yourself, this seems way too good to be true at this point, right? And I certainly don't fault you for being a skeptic. I certainly was when I saw this technology for the first time. But I can tell you, after using it and after implementing it, I am absolutely a believer of Incorta, and I'm really trying to bring this to all of the clients that we work with and that I personally work with, because I think it's a great solution, to really handle these data challenges that we see everywhere today. I do want to share with you a couple of common questions that I typically get after introducing Incorta to new people, because I think they are interesting discussion points to have. So just want to share those with you before we jump into the demo today. The first one I get all the time is, so it sounds like Incorta is just another data lake. It's not a data lake. The way I look at a data lake is, oftentimes we will throw data into our data lake and say, we're going to just get a bunch of data in there and we're going to figure out a way to model it later, right? But a lot of times what ends up happening then is we either don't grab enough or we didn't grab the right pieces of our source systems because we're not ingesting full data sets. And so ultimately we're losing that self-service aspect, and we continue to have some of those same data challenges pop up from time to time because we're going to have to constantly continue to add new data elements and just not have that self-service. Within Incorta, though, we replace or we meet that need and provide that self-service and allow the business to be more agile, to your changing needs. The second, from kind of a technical standpoint, especially after I show some of the data visualization aspects, I always get the question of, so it's just like another BI tool, right? So it does have some, data visualization, properties or functionalities, certainly. But the way I like to answer this is, there are new BI tools that come out all the time, right? And a lot of times organizations will say, I want to get that latest and greatest BI tool. They purchase it, they implement it, and all the same performance issues they had before with their old BI tool still exist. And the reason for that is they're never addressing the underlying data issues themselves, right? They're never addressing, maybe a data warehouse problem or a data store problem. And so with Incorta, you're doing so much more than just, leveraging BI technology and data visualizations. You're really attacking that root cause of performance issues. So that's kind of how I like to answer that question there. The next two are more, philosophical in nature, but one question I typically get from IT is, hey, if you're telling me this is going to save us so much time, right? What should we be spending our time on now instead if we're saving so much, right? And I like to answer that by, encouraging IT to look at data sources they may not have considered looking at before, right? There's so much information out there today, and there's so many different ways to tell the story of what your business or where your business is going. Bring in weather data to track your sales order, right? How is weather trending impacting, what your customers are buying, right? That can tell a fascinating story. If you're, a medical device company, right? Bringing in CDC information to be able to throw your financials up against, flu season trending, things like that. Thinking outside the box a little bit and kind of bringing in some of those external data sources to complement, your financial or operational data sets. Another piece that I also encourage people to do is, start looking forward and start to consider evaluating, predictive analytics solutions and machine learning, technology. And the nice thing with Incorta is from a back-end standpoint, from a technical standpoint, we have a Spark engine in the background. So we're able to really kind of prep ourselves for more machine learning as we move forward, predictive analytics when the time is right. So certainly the back end of Incorta is set up to be future looking, to allow our organizations to be much more agile when they want to move forward with some of those more innovative technology aspects. The last one I get all the time too is, how do you attack the cultural shift? Obviously that's gonna vary organization to organization and truly come down to how does IT and the business work together, right? Are they friends or foe, first of all? And then secondly, I think regardless of the relationship there, I think trying to focus on return on investment and not what's being replaced or what's being replicated or enhanced. Think about the return on investment, right? If the business as a whole can be more productive and have actionable insights and can improve self-service, I mean, those two alone can drive so much efficiency for the business that you're really this product's really paying for itself, within the first few months of usage. Appreciate your time on this, but I do want to I like to get ahead of this a little bit because these are a lot of the common questions that I get, right off the bat. So with that, why don't we hop into the product demo itself here? So I'm going to go ahead and end the slideshow here and go into our eCapital Incorta environment. So this is kind of our login screen. We recently did upgrade to release 4.1, so we're on the latest and greatest now, which is great. So there's been some strong enhancements from an architecture standpoint. But when we log in, we really have a few different modules here up top. So I'm actually going to start on the data module, and this is where we would evaluate what data sources are we going after. So if you're a large organization with a very large, extensive enterprise data warehouse, I certainly wouldn't recommend, hey, let's boil the ocean in phase one and replace all of it all at once, right? I think finding specific use cases, or maybe you look at a few of the data marts that you have out there that are somewhat redundant to your data warehouse. Maybe you attack those first and find a specific use case the business wants to be more efficient at. And so we can find our data sources here. We can connect to real data sources and ERP systems. We can also load data files if we need to. But if I go here and just show you how easy it is to add a new data source and some of the built-in adapters that are available, I think you'll start to understand the simplicity of Incorta and why a lot of companies are really starting to see the attractiveness of it. So there are a lot of different built-in adapters here, and we always have our custom option too. These are all JDBC connections, so all Java-based. You'll select your data source adapter, add a data source name, have a username and password, a read-only ID would be preferable, and then your JDBC connection string. Add your data source, you're good to go. Once you've added your data source, you can start to ingest the data into your Incorta hub. And that's where our schema module comes into play. So I'm going to show you like an AR engine here first, maybe. So what we have here is we have a lot of different tables that are making up an AR module or AR components of an Oracle e-business suite backend system or ERP system. So you're going to see we have 31 tables, 153 joins. As I scroll through here, you're going to see a bunch of different tables. And then we have our joins, creating our relationships between the tables. If I go into any of these tables, I can actually see the details behind them. So here are all my different columns within this specific table here. Do I have any formula columns that I want to add in? Runtime security filters, obviously our joins. Do I want to add any load filters? So maybe I have a use case where I really only care about 2 years worth of data. I can control that very easily with my load filters there, so I'm not always loading 20 years of data, for example. I can actually come in here from a technical side. and actually look at the SQL that's being generated based on this table, update my full refresh or my incremental refresh, so I can actually separate those out to be separate logic, if that makes sense for the use case. But obviously this is a lot of detail, right? Because we have a lot of different tables, a lot of different joins just to come to this one accounts receivable use case within our ERP system. So if I look, right, I'll cancel out of this. Each of these tables, a lot of different columns. We got 49, 112, 66, 119, etc., right? We certainly don't want the end users to have the ability to leverage all of those different columns for reporting. It just wouldn't be necessary, right? And that's where the business schema module comes into play. And so I'll go into a collections manager business schema that we have created, very similar, or I should say it's related to the accounts receivable schema. It's really just a subset of what we have there. And if you look here, we have much less availability as far as the columns that are presented. So this is really our presentation view, if you will. This is what you want our end users to see. And so if I look at an example here, kind of scroll down, I'm looking at payment details. I have the name of the column itself. So this is what it looks like in the source table. And then it's giving me my source column and table name here for more details. With this middle part, as far as our label, that's important, right? Because depending on what we're looking at, we may need to have a column called attribute 15 that in that column doesn't really mean much, but we know because we know the data, we know that's a very critical field in our reporting. It might represent operating unit, or it might represent bill to account or something like that. And so we have the ability to really name that or label that anything we want, right? So we can kind of provide a better presentation view to our end users. Once we set up our business schemas, then we can start building content. So I'm actually going to go into an order management example first. So I'll go into an order summary example. This is our same Oracle e-business suite kind of vision app. So it's like a demo app that Oracle provides in the back end. All scrubbed and made up data here, but it'll be great for demo purposes. So when I open up this dashboard, you're going to notice right off the bat, I have some top level KPIs, up top. So these are really formulas, right? And then I have even my order amount versus my invoice amount up top, truly, representing kind of the top level organizational view. But as I start to, look at the data visualization options that I have here, I can start to click on things and everything will change, right? So if I want to look at, our top 10 customers by orders, let's look at, business world here. When I click on this top 10 customer, everything's changing dynamically, including my top level KPIs, right? So now up top, all my metrics have changed. My order amount versus invoiced amount has also changed. As I scroll down and continue to look at my data visualization, everything is dynamic. My favorite part of Incorta is the ability to leverage the tables down below. And let me just show you that quick. So if I scroll to the right here and look at all this transactional level detail, right? And I look at my order amount, I have thousands of records down here, all this transactional level detail, tons of detail here, right? A lot of different columns. When I total this up, it's 422 million, right? If I go back to the top of my dashboard, I have my 422 million right here, right? If I start to add some additional views to this, let's look at the warehouse called Vision France. Let's just look here. Now my number has gone down to about 33 million, 32.9, right? Now when I scroll back down to my table, because we have that direct data mapping engine that we're leveraging within Incorta, I retain that data fidelity, right? There's my 32,969 right there. So I have all the transactional level detail underneath all my visualization. This to me is incredible because now what we're providing to the end user is constant data fidelity. So if you're in a finance system role where you're supporting the business constantly, I'm sure you've come across situations where you've deployed the solution properly, but maybe there's a trust issue with the data because 2 months ago there was a tie-out issue or some data didn't load properly, right? Well, here I can always back up whatever number I'm reporting because I have all the transactions always available. I'm going to back out and say, let's take out France and go right back to that 422. I'm going to have that 422 down on the bottom within my table once again. So when I saw this for the first time, that's when I was a believer, because I've been building cubes for a long, long time. And I know we always struggle with trying to find an articulate drill through strategy that satisfies all of the use cases and all of the needs of the business to make it agile enough, but still seamless. And this really provides that ability to start at a top level KPI and go down to that transactional level detail in a few clicks and continue to keep the data fidelity. So when I saw that, that's when I knew I was a believer. Let me just show you maybe one more dashboard here, just to give you some other ideas of kind of the art of the possible here. I'm going to go into a receivables dashboard and maybe look at some receivables summary here, give you a little different flavor, just to kind of see some of this. I do want to show you this too. Let's go into an edit mode and just show you some of the data visualization that's out there within the tool itself, because I do think it's pretty comprehensive actually. Especially because it's not truly a BI tool itself, right? It's a full-on modern analytics platform. So we have our tables we can choose from. We have a lot of other information here. So we have our different charts, right? So columns, bars, pie charts, a lot of dynamic time series and line graphs here. And then we have some more of our kind of new age data visualization options, maps, heat maps, bubble charts, pyramid charts, the map bubble. We have a lot of different options here, right? And finally, as I scroll down to the bottom, we have these data fields too. So depending on the nature of the data element, right, we might want to use, currency or percentages. We might want to include decimals. We might not want to. So we have a lot of different options there. And then finally, we have some performance gauges. Depending on what type of thresholds you're trying to hit. So a lot of flexibility here. I was really impressed with what's kind of out of the box here, because a lot of data visualization tools don't even provide all this today. So I'll cancel out of here quick, and maybe I'll show you one more here. We go into our AR aging summary. So we have kind of our map here view, and let's say I want to add or search for something here. So I know I'm looking for something called vision. I'm gonna start typing in vision. Okay, it's starting to give me matches for vision. So we kind of have that Google search engine built in as well, right? So I don't have to know, what table something exists in or what aggregated view something exists in. I can just start searching for it because I know, what it looks like. Maybe you start, what a product SKU is, kind of like, the first three digits of the code, but you don't know the full code. I can start typing that in, and then it'll start to complete it for me. And if I come into, I click on Vision Financial Services, I can save this as a bookmark as well. So if this is a view I want to see, each month, I can do that. And then I can come back in here and say, I want to look at my bookmarks. So this is one I already have saved. So this is something I want to look at every single month. Click right on there, it'll bring me right to that view, right? And I can start drilling in right from there. Okay, great, right? And again, I always have that detail at the bottom of all my different transactions, right? And things will always tie out because I keep that data fidelity. I also have the ability to look at additional filters. So I'll remove these here quick. I want to maybe just filter by different types of fields that we have on this report, right? So maybe I want to look at invoice number. Start to look at invoice number. Probably doesn't make as much sense. Maybe fiscal period. Just want to look at, April 2008. And this is nice because it's very closely related to kind of how Excel filters look. So from a usability standpoint, I think most people are very familiar with it. So hopefully, by showing you this brief demo, it generated some excitement for you because I think I really wanted to demonstrate that ability to peel back the onion, go from that top level all the way down to a transaction within one dashboard with one technology platform and be able to provide that self-service when we need to. Because if I decide as an end user, hey, I want some new fields, I can go to my business schema, grab them from my source schema, and maybe add them to my dashboard quick, and I'm good to go, right? So that process that may have taken weeks or months before, you're now doing that within hours or days. So again, really focusing on that return on investment. So that is really what I wanted to cover today. Again, very much appreciate everyone's time. I know it's a busy time of year. We will be publishing this webinar on our website and sending out follow-up emails. For those of you who want to share it with others within your organization, would certainly encourage you to reach out to us if you are more curious about the tool. I would be happy to schedule on-site product demos with you, or even just answer some questions back and forth via email. So with that, hope everyone has a happy holiday, and thank you very much again for attending today's webinar.